Hello, this is Teacher Wayne, and this time I'm doing a video on something completely different, something called Phaser Games, and this is for my BSc students. So it's basically web-based gaming here. So let's minimize all this. Let's go to there and let's just show you. So here's a directory of some of my games I've made. So if I just click on test 5, which is the one I want to look at, so this is basically what we've got. I've got a little player running around the screen, and I'm just showing you how to create a simple 2-level based web game. So this is in a browser and I'm using Chrome here. If you try to use Internet Explorer, it doesn't work. Chrome has the extra functionality. Once I click on that down, it takes me to level 2. Now if you notice, my wolf sprites aren't that good. I've just had a quick edit of them, so there's more work for me to do in this particular game, but as you can see, I get a score of 10 every time I collect it. I've got multiple levels and that's it. When you get to the end, you get a win screen, you get a run. I just want to show you what happens when I die. I get a die screen as well, a main menu to want to play again. It's got a little simple little button. So this is a really simple example of a web game. So let me just show you what it looks like. So if we go to test 5 here, I've got, if you look at it, I've got a index file, and if I just edit that, you can see what's actually in it. So this is what actually, when I started this video, this is what we saw. So if you look here, I'm just going to go through some of the stuff in the actual script, and I'm going to open up individual bits. This is a multi-state phaser game I've created. It's basically, we're using JavaScript, and we're particularly using JavaScript library in the form of this phaser.min.js. That is the actual core bit, and that is that's from the version of Java from the Phaser game engine I've got, which I can't remember exactly the version I actually use, but I'll probably got it in my notes somewhere, but I'll come back to that in a bit. It's very important you stick when you're creating games, you stick with the same version throughout, because there are differences between the Java script in the different versions. But if you look here, I'm loading up a load of different scripts. I've got the boot, preloader, main menu, U1, the game 2, and if you look, they're all in a folder called SRC. If you look here, I've got them all here, and these are individual JavaScripts, which I'll open up later and show you. So these are all of them. Now if I just highlight these 4 here that I've highlighted, these 4 are basically, one is a main menu. This has a simple little button. U1 is very similar to main menu with a button on it. Preloader is just the simple preloader that just preloads all the sprites. It doesn't do much else. This is similar to boot. The actual main games are these 2 here. That's the level 1 and that's level 2, the game and the game 2. So let me just load up these individual ones and then go through them. But before I do that, I just want to show you this bit here. This is how we actually run them all. So if we notice here, we've got window unload function. So in other words, as soon as the window loads up, it runs this function, and this function runs all these various elements. We define a variable called game. Now that game variable is used for, look, I highlight it, can you see it's actually in all these different things. So we're defining this game here. It defines the game, and if you notice, that's the size of the window it runs, 800 by 600. So it's quite a small resolution. I mean, I've designed it so that this game can run just about on any browser. The beauty of web-based gaming is it'll work on any system. It can work on my mobile phone, it can work on a tablet, it can work on an iPad, it can work on a Mac, it can work on anything that's got a browser. That's the beauty of it. It is very much hardware independent gaming, unlike lots of other gaming sort of systems out there that are platform specific. This is platform independent, and this is why I think web-based gaming is definitely going to be the future of gaming. There's a move to get more 3D sort of stuff coming in, 3D routines, and keeps it hardware independent, so it allows the hardware to change but the game remains the same. which if you're trying to write a game and create a game, can you see the power of that? Especially if you're using a web browser to do it. Imagine playing your favorite game just for a web browser on a low spec, any system you want. Imagine just how powerful that is, and that's the way I think games are going to start to develop in future. But anyway, here we are. That's how we defined it, and that's the screen res there, fairly low. And here we are, we've created all these various game states. So we're adding each one. So we're adding a boot. If you notice, game state, add boot, preloader, main menu, U1, the game, and game 2. These is it. And then it starts here, says we're starting with the boot. And if you notice, when I load up each one, each one links to the one after it. It'll have a game state.start, and it'll have the next one. So let me open up the boot. And then you can see as it goes. If you look here, this is the boot one. You will notice with a lot of these files, they'll all have a preload, they'll all have a create, and some will have an update. They'll all have this in function here, preload and create. But here, this is the basic game .boot.protocol. It's quite important, this terminology. This is what I'm doing to initialize it. Here you can show that I'm actually setting the scale. I set the game as 800 by 600, but here it can actually, it's even more flexible. It can set the range right down to that slow resolution, right up to that resolution. It forces it to be landscape, forces it to be pages horizontal, so it forces it, it just defines it all. Here we are, we're loading all the initial images up here. The play game PNGs, this is the game over sort of assets for the various different things. That's the sprite sheet for the button, the sky, the ground, the star, the diamond, the dude, baddie, and this is the wolf, another one I'm introduced. Here, can you see that these are what's known as sprite sheets? Sprite sheets contain multiple characters that we then are animated. So an image is a static image and a sprite sheet is an animated image, and there's multiple. And if you look, that defines the actual size of the individual sprite within the sprite sheet. So I know that this dude is 32 wide and 48 high. Oops, edit, undo. And the same for this guy, same for this one here. They're all slightly different. So let me open up, that's the boot one. Preload, I think, is the next one. Oh, if you look, oh, hang on, just before I finish, if you notice, it says this state in the create function. Only thing the create function does is start the preloader. So let's load up the preloader and show you that. Preloader, bang. And now here, it's basically, there's a lot more to this. Well, it doesn't seem like it's a lot more. Here we're defining the variables that we're going to be used in the main game. These are all the main games. Now technically and in theory I could use all this into the boot, or put all the boot into the preload and merge these two files as one. And in theory I could if I wanted to, but let's not worry about that. Now here you notice it says this state.start the game, so I'm going to load up the game. So like I said, the game is the first level. Now this here is all standard sort of routines that we do just to sort of define how Phaser runs. These are fairly static, you don't change them. This here is the create function. In the create function, the purpose of the create function is to create the overall look and feel of the actual game, how it is in the first frame before anything really starts moving. Let me just go through a few bits and pieces. I've defined some variables here. I'm not going to explain it because this is my game. This is the bits that you need to focus on as a student doing this course. Is we've got here this sets the background sprite, which is sky. But for imagine if you use your own sprites, you can set your own background. Here it just applies the physics system to the game. Basically we're creating platforms which add it to the physics system. Sets the scale of the ground, makes the ground unmovable, which is quite handy, stops it moving around. In other words, because it's got the physics system applied, if you don't make it unmovable, gravity will be applied to it and they'll start moving around. We want them to be immovable. So here I've created some ledgers and I've defined where they all are relative this is the X and Y, so they're all relative to each other, so they've created 3 separate ledgers for the game. So if I go test 5, and I can't pause this game, but I can show you this. Oops. Can you see that each of these ledgers here represents each of these ledgers here? This game's going to, as soon as this guy touches me, I'm going to die, but I'll just leave it there for now. So here we're defining 3 different bad guys. If you look, I've got 1, 2, 3 bad guys. I've kept them all separately because I've got them, they're all moving. See, this guy here just patrols between this path and this path. That guy patrols between there and there. And this guy patrols between that spot and that spot. They've all got different locations. I've got this guy, he actually drops down because gravity applies to him, but he's actually patrolling from there to there. That guy's doing from there to there, and I've got some stars as well. So let me just go back on there and minimize this. So I've applied physics to the guys, physics to the player, set what the bounce level is, what the gravity is like. Just basically quickly defined what the left and right animation sequences are for the player and for the bad guys. Because if you notice when you're playing the game, the actual the animation sequences, this guy got a different animation sequence from left and right. This guy's got different animation sequences left and right as well. So minimize that. Okay, so the stars here and the diamond. So this is the simple create status. Now if we scroll down here to the actual update function, this is where all these sort of controls take place. If you look here, if cursor's left and he's down, the player moves one way. If he's right and down, he moves that way. Else this happens here. So basically this is how we can apply sort of the movement control of the player. And basically we're saying if he's touching, basically this is to check to see if there's gravity, etc. I've got no ways, basically my little variables are defined at the top just to sort of define the limits of what they can patrol. And then I've also got the fact what happens if we collect stars. If I collect a star, I've created a function called collect stars. So I think up here, yeah, I said basically if there is a collision between the player and the stars, which is this here, then the routine collect star runs. And if I look down here for collect star, there you are. All that happens is the star is destroyed and we increase our score by 10. Really quite straightforward. Let's go up here. If you have a collision between the player and any of the bad guys, so they're all the same. I've just got bad guy 1, bad guy 2, bad guy 3. Basically, you die. It's the idle routine runs. And if you get to the diamond at the end, you won. And if you look, it starts the second level, which is the game 2. Let me open up the game 2. The game 2 is virtually identical to the game 1. All I've done is just change this bit here. So I've just changed the location of stuff, and this time we're using the wolf sprites, so I'm using different sprites. I just want to show you some of the other routines I've got in here. I've also got let's go to the main menu. Main menu is not really a menu. It's got the classic create and update functions. It doesn't have a preload, this one, because it doesn't need one, because the preload for this was done back in this boot here, because it's there. The preload was done right back there. You do need to have it, but sometimes because they all link, because of this bit, then it's already preloaded. But anyway, so I've got some title text, I've got other text, like you want to play again, click a button. I've got a simple little button that just says start game. So if I play this game here and I die, there's the main menu, and it's got one little button here, which is 400 by 300 by 400, which is there. Really quite straightforward. I know I've just blurred through this really quick, but this is just to give you an overview of what a game will actually look like in simple terms. What a multi-level phaser game can look like. it basically we are using JavaScripts. Yeah, we're using other different sprites. I've got, if you notice here, I've got other sprites in here. There's my wolf thing, my wolf sort of thing I've got to edit at some stage because it's not quite right, but there's my wolf sequence there. I've not quite got that working. There's a little dude sprite sheet there with all the animation states in it. There's my buttons that's got the runs. As you move your mouse over it, you get the different colors as you move your mouse over it, etc. And these are the other bits and pieces I've got in there as well. So anyway, this is Teacher Wayne, just giving a very brief introduction to game states using the Phaser game engine. Anyway, thank you very much for your time, and goodbye.